Good afternoon. This is the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission meeting of April 19th, 4:30 p.m. at Sullivan Independence Hall. In the room here are Jack Hirschler, Don Hyman, commissioners. On the phone is Doug Metchik. In addition, we are, the Harbormaster is here, as is Jeff Engborg, our mooring contractor, Jeff Stedman, our consultant, and Betty Gabriel, our recording secretary. First order of business here will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Since we have a flag, let's all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we have Commissioner Jeff Warren just joined us. So, first order of business would have been the approval of the minutes, but we don't.
My apologies.
That's quite all right, Betty. Betty is working on them diligently, and we will have them, the March minutes, at our May meeting. My report is pretty short this month. We were copied on an email that was sent to the First Select Woman and the Conservation Department from DEEP noticing tentative determination to approve the town's application for work to replace culverts and flap gates and waive the requirement of a public hearing. And I believe that work is, in fact, I know it's outside of our jurisdiction. I believe it's down around Reef Road. I heard the town engineers talking about it. The other item that I'm going to report on, and Jeff will give us more details about it, is that he and I and Mylan Bull of Connecticut Audubon were down at the country club, and as always, thanks to the country club for allowing us to go down there on their property and take a look at the sand that we're hoping the Army Corps will be dredging in a year or so. The purpose of our meeting was to assess the Piper ploving habitat and take a look at possible alternate places. As you may recall, piping plovers have not nested there for several years. However, the Army Corps of Engineers and DEEP are concerned that it's a potential nesting habitat and have asked that we identify some alternate spots within range of this site. And so we were there with Michael and to take a look at the terrain and the possible places that might become alternate habitat. So, and that's really all that I have to report. Are there any questions at this point? Okay. Harbormaster Report.
Kim, this is Doug. I actually do have one question.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
I looked between now and then. I recall at one period of time the piping plover was listed as endangered. I think the conservation status has changed. Was there any discussion around the status of that particular species? Near threatened was what it seems to be nationally or something. I don't know what it is here, which would be endangered, vulnerable, and then near threatened.
We discussed it, and I can't recall whether it's listed as a federal endangered species. But Doug, I can send that out tonight. But we know we did discuss that. But it doesn't affect, though, our need to mitigate any impacts on the habitat.
Yeah.
Still we have to replace any habitat any viable habitat now with new habitat. So whether it's threatened or endangered, that doesn't. We discussed what the classification is, but it wouldn't affect what we have to do. If that makes any sense. I don't know.
Great, it does. Thank you.
And in fact, Mr. Bull was able to tell us exactly how many pairs of mating piping plovers there were in the state, and it's a pretty small number. So, hence the concern.
Near
Google says it's near threatened.
Okay. But we're still obliged because both the Army Corps and DEEP want some spot for them to mate if they decide to come back.
It's also just the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service too, that's controlling what we propose to do to mitigate the impact on habitat.
So we were down there just simply surveying and looking around to identify.
We can talk about that in a bit. You know.
Thanks, Doug. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Leclerc, Harbormaster Report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of items. First, as you know, the USGS will be proceeding with their water monitoring at Sasko Creek, at the Yacht Club, at the bridge, Tide Mill, and with the buoy to the west of the channel. They contacted me a few days ago indicating that they are now going to be installing the buoy structure May 11th and May 12th. They ran into a bit of supply chain issues getting everything there. They are using, as I suggested, the Yacht Club as their vendor for the installation, and I think they've reached out to the club already about that and coordinating the installation. They were also out there last week. They gave me a call because they were launching their boat from the yacht yard to do some manual sampling in the interim. All the moorings are in. Much like the spring flowers, they've sprouted from the bottom of the harbor. They're all in position and looking good. We've coordinated with Pequot regarding the positions of a few of them to accommodate the sizes of the vessels, so everyone's vessel fits. With the moorings this year, we had 6 vacancies, 6 non-renewals. Effectively, that created 4 new spots because, as you know, we lost South Wall 00 and 01 due to encroachment into the federal channel. We were able to redeploy those 2 vessels, Souffle and the boat right behind it, to similar South Wall locations. Both of those owners are happy with those locations, so that worked out well. We were able to relocate a 49-foot sailboat. We requested a new location from the north wall over to the South Helix area. We had 2 openings in the South Helix area. We were able to put a 40-plus foot vessel off the list into the South Helix area as well. And then we took a 43-foot vessel who was also on the top of the list, and he is now on the north wall location. So we're able to move 3 large boats again. We have a sailboat that grew from 27 to 34 feet by a current mooring hold, and we were able to accommodate him on the mid-wall area by working with the club to make an adjustment in spacing, and the boat will fit in just right. And we have several other boats, one at Perry Green and the other at the west wall that have come in as a priority. One is a fishing boat, and one is a riparian property owner. The fishing boat, I've indicated to him the requirements to get a priority assignment as a fishing boat, what's required by the Connecticut DEEP, the fishing license, as well as a potentially registered fishing boat, depending on the type of the license. The catch reports that are submitted monthly to DEEP. I've indicated that as harbor master, I want copies of the monthly catch reports as well, and that also that I reserve the right and will do periodic boarding inspections over the summer to check his fish reports because you're required to have an updated fish report every time you go out to make sure the vessel is a commercial fishing vessel, because it does get a priority over everyone, and we don't want individuals claiming they're a commercial fishing vessel, pay for a license, and just be a regular recreational vessel. That's not fair to the folks that are waiting 10, 20 years for their assignments. The system is working well with the assignments. I've worked with our vendor. We've got boats, probably a half dozen new boats added. Most of the folks on the list have renewed. There are a few fell off now. Only one individual complained about the $10 fee charge this year, and I explained why, given the cost. Blessing of the Fleet will be Saturday, June 11th. Beginning breakfast, I believe, is 8:30 at the Southport School. interested, the parade will begin at 11, and 12 noon will be the first boat passing for the blessing. I went to one meeting on that already. There apparently will be a few more meetings to get everything coordinated on that. I'll keep you folks in the loop. I've offered to do a blast email to all the vessels in the harbor so that we can get the timing right for the people that want to get, they'll know what the cannon shot. They're going to reach out to the yacht club as well, ask for a cannon firing promptly at noon to get the aggression moving. So I'm sure that can be accommodated. And that's basically my report. And I have one vessel, I should say, that reached out to me from Fairfield Beach. A gentleman who is a new property owner has requested a mooring, so I've approved his mooring, which I do as Harbormaster. I looked at his tackle, his renewal schedule, the size, and everything, and gave him permission.
Great. So how many people on the waiting list?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, it's a significant number, correct? I mean, it's
It is.
well above 70.
Oh, yes, it's above
Okay.
70. I think I just think it's 70 here. I could pull up the new printer, I believe. Let me do a manual count.
That's okay. No. So
It is above 70. It's not getting any.
shorter.
It's not getting any shorter. It may be one or two nets longer when you look at the numbers here.
Okay.
I think the number we had were 74, 75, 6, 79, 79, 2 came off, 77, 76, 75, 74, 73, 72, 71, 70, 69, so I think we have 71 right now.
Okay.
Which is almost exactly the number that we had a year ago.
Right.
Right.
The people we've been able to accommodate, people who've fallen off, and other people which ones are good at.
Yeah, it's a good result, right? It's good that we're keeping up with the numbers, yeah.
But also important to note, in view of the fact that we have a couple of priority moorings, that we do have 70 people who have been jumped by the fishermen and the riparian owner, and that, you know, there's a substantial number of folks out there who are still anxious and enthusiastic about getting into the harbor, so.
I should note that the top of the waiting list was a 35-foot commercial fishing boat who declined and came off the list permanently. He decided that a mooring is not appropriate for his fishing vessel, and he's keeping it elsewhere.
So he's off the list altogether?
Off the waiting list. I offered him a spot at the first commercial boat. It's a large boat. He's harbor appropriate.
Please don't call this phone number.
Well, still, 70 is a big number.
It is.
It's a big number. Any questions for the harbor master?
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, Kim, this is Bill
it's
Perugini
been
joining
a
remotely.
Bill.
How are you? Yeah, just
Go ahead.
question.
So I finally
Yeah.
answered it, because I thought maybe it was somebody I knew. So now I'm gonna block it.
Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I just hear some background noise, so I didn't want to interrupt.
No, it's not us.
Yeah, so historically, is that the number on the waiting list? And do we confine the number of people on that waiting list on an annual basis?
We don't confine them. The list is open to anyone who wants to pay the fee, the $50 for a get out.
That's what I was waiting for, but then it was.
The goal is to keep whittling at that list and to hopefully not letting it get any larger. It's a long wait, Bill. It's a long, very long wait because of the number of moorings in the harbor and the desirability of them. And we can't add any more.
It's not unusual for it to be 70 or 80 people on the list.
No, it's been more. The list is, I've got copies of a much bigger list.
Yeah.
And how long do you anticipate the wait to be for all of those positions to be filled?
That's a good question because when everything went on the system, it doesn't have the original application date on the system. I know myself, when I came on 5 years ago, I think it was a 20-year wait for me to get on with my boat, 22-foot boat.
Wow.
So it was 2 decades wait easily back then.
I was on the much bigger and better stone.
And I've heard that. I've heard other people say about the same.
Yeah.
I could have told that stone too.
So,
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for those insights.
Just a small detail, I didn't hear when you said the parade would start for the
Parade's 11.
11 and first passing a boat is at noon.
Yeah, the parade's 11 o'clock from the parking lot, congregation, and they want exactly at noon, the first boat to pass for the blessing.
Thank you.
That's June, what date?
June 11th,
June
Saturday,
11th.
June 11th.
Saturday, June 11, blessing of the fleet. Any other questions for the harbor master? Thank you, Mr. Harbor Master. Our next item on the agenda is the report from our mooring contractor, People's Yacht Club, and Mr. Engborg, who's the manager of the yacht club, is here to update us on the status of the mooring field in the harbor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to report that 98% of the moorings are in. The outer harbor mooring we still have to put in. We've had some tough weather. It's been interesting. Last night, for example, I'm happy to report that no moorings changed position, by the way. We're still servicing the North Anchor. We'll probably be done next week with that. I have a flash drive for you, Harbor Master, when you're ready, with all the information involving the North Anchorage and our CYC docks.
Yeah, they're probably hard, right?
All the town areas that rigged Prairie Green 1, they have abundance mushroom for that, and there's the 5-mile-an-hour buoys are yet to be installed there. That will be next week. We'll get well out there. And we got our first transient boat coming on Thursday, in a couple of days.
Wow.
Former member of the yacht club, but still transient. We've been working with the USGS on those weather buoys, but there's some technical supply issues. They said they had one of their components, and the club was waiting to secure locations on the filing and how we can support their
Hi, Jerry.
their components.
Yeah, package for you. Oh, I
So looking forward to a great season for us, and Pump Out will open up on May 1st. Schedule for everything, and some of the fishing boats, there's a couple small boats arrived.
Great. Any questions? Any questions for Mr. Engborg? How about the moorings on the wall that tend to drift?
Oh, yeah, they were enlarged, and I think that Brian met with Travis and went over that tackle, so we're hoping that area won't be a problem. That area continues to be a problem as the sand seems to migrate into the harbor, and there's a kind of a sandwich structure at the bottom there. We have a layer of sand, layer of mud, layer of sand. So, and the washout, I guess it's called, where the French Club and Clearfield pond opens up into the harbor. There's quite a bit of current there, and it's rocky. So hopefully with these larger anchors, we will have less problems over there. And I think there's a smaller boat there anyway, a small cat boat, so yeah, should be okay that year. We'll monitor that together and adjust
Great. Great, excellent.
Travis and I went out twice in the fall, and I just spoke with them as recently as last weekend about, they've got a very good handle on, what's
Sure.
needed out there from their experience in the past, watching what drifts and what size things are.
Do the owners know that they're kind of in a difficult position?
Same folks as before.
Oh, okay.
Those are all the same, the owners. The only ones that have moved were the Souffle and number 1, and they've only gone back a few positions. One of them went into Mr. White's spot. One of them into South Wall. Let's see. One of them went into South Wall 3, and the other one went into South Wall 7.
Okay.
So they didn't go back that far, just a few spots back.
So the folks who are there in those spots know that you guys are on it. That's, you're on it and that they're on it.
We communicated with them and found
Good.
suitable alternative areas, and it was right around that big storm, so.
Right. Good. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions for Mr. Engborg? Thank you.
Hey, Tim,
Yeah?
it's Sam Cargill. I just want to let you know I'm present. I apologize I was late.
Better late than never, Sam. Welcome.
Indeed. Thank you.
Okay, no questions for Mr. Engborg. Lower Wharf. Mr. Stedman.
That's my report, and I still have some more work to do in order to transfer not transfer, but repurpose the funds from the Connecticut Port Authority for
Okay.
So I delayed in doing that, but I'll have that at the beginning of next week.
Great,
Friday.
great.
The town's finance department was interested in the grant, because apparently grants that are awarded to the town have to be accepted formally by the town. So our grant for dredging was formally accepted by the appropriate town department to do that. If we're repurposing the grant that was previously formally accepted, we have to get a formal acceptance of the repurpose. I continue to talk with the Connecticut Port Authority, and they're fine with that, although we don't have a letter yet from them. I called Mr. Salvatore today to remind him about that.
Good, okay.
And he didn't call that.
Okay. But I know you've requested that letter from him several times.
They're having some more issues, the executive but it doesn't affect, and they're getting ready to announce the next round of grants as well. And we talked about the possibility of applying for a grant to help with the replacement of the Perry Green bulkhead, if not enough money is available to do that. So we were wondering about the schedule for meeting the town's schedule to replace the bulkhead and knowing what the Port Authority's schedule is for providing another grant. But it's something that we should keep in mind, because they did say that that's a potentially fundable project for the grant. At least a portion of it, because I know, as you said, Brian, that the town has already received money that can be used towards that. And I don't know that Mr. Hurley, we talked earlier today, I don't know that the request for qualifications or request for proposals for engineering to design the new bulkhead has gone out yet. But we've helped engineering. We put together materials for them and provided photographs, and they were included in meetings that we've had. Another aspect of that project, which is something, again, it's a harbor improvement project that I think we can make people aware of. But there's also a need to coordinate that with the connection with the yacht club's bulkhead. That will certainly be a harbor infrastructure project. It's in the works.
Is there anything else that to change subjects just a little bit, any other projects that we have in mind that would Connecticut Port Authority fund that we haven't already? They've got another bunch of grants going out.
21-foot wings.
The electric charging station?
Yeah, we were having a discussion just as the meeting was starting about whether we should, it's a catch-22. There's a development of electric auxiliary power boats, but if we don't have any way for people to charge them, people who are repowering their boats can't consider that as an option. So if we were to do that, there are clearly harbors that are installing those today for boat use.
We can inquire. I don't know if that fits within the ideas or the purposes of infrastructure. It certainly is infrastructure, but we can ask.
Okay. Why not? Any questions for Mr. Stedman on the Lower Wharf project?
The fucking thing.
Off of the area where the pilings are. So we were going to be taking out the old pilings. I can't remember. Do you know, Jeff, what the area is?
I can look it up, but I know that the channel is roughly 40 to 50 feet from towards the country. It looks like there's plenty of water there, but when you look at the chart, the channel is that close to there. I can pull it up on my phone.
I mean, we see on our depth saying 10 feet, 12 feet, depending on the tide. I mean, it's always amazingly deep.
That's not in the channel. So I guess what I'm thinking is if we were to pursue a electrification place, the vessel needs to sit there for a while to charge it, right? Just like a Tesla does.
Right.
And so we'd need to have a a place where they could go, and I was concerned about the town dock
Right.
because it's used by community boating and that could become a conflict. I was thinking if there could be a floating dock adjacent to, a little further into the harbor, that could potentially be a better solution to pursue that. We're already going to be doing improvements to the pilings. I'm wondering if we think about that potentially.
But the town dock, you have 30 minutes, right?
Yeah. How long,
Each-
are these
how long does-
superchargers like?
They're not I don't think they're like supercharged strength, but it's the in-between strength charges. So,
My line,
I think,
push my brake.
So we don't know what 30 minutes would do.
yeah, right, my
I mean-
suspicion is it needs to be more than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, even for cars, they need more than that, generally,
Yeah.
if they're really under.
Oh,
And
okay.
the boats have big batteries. I mean, people are taking out their diesels, they're taking out their diesel tanks, and they're replacing them with batteries and an engine that's much lighter, a motor that's much lighter. They're also going to be building boats with these, so I mean,
Right.
people, as they buy new boats, look
Right.
at these as
Right.
options. And certainly, we're focusing on environmental concerns in our harbor. It seems like it would fit with focus.
Right.
Might there be a floating dock off the lower wharf versus the town dock? Yeah, I'm the furthest,
That's what you're talking
That's what I'm talking.
The old fishing pier.
It's where the pier, we're going to be, one of our projects is to take out the old fishing pilings that they were.
And at low tide, they're exposed. You see the sand, but
It gets pretty steep quick, so if we
Very
stick a
quick.
dock on that,
Floating
we
dock.
have 40 feet. So that means even if we're out 20 feet, we still have 20 feet to the channel.
right, especially if we're gonna have 100-foot wide.
That could be a great location. People have some time to sit on the town property there on the benches while their boats are charging and watch,
We also have to be cognizant of the need for a setback from the federal channel.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
there's a setback there, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
How far does it have to be, do you know?
Well, the normal distance is 3 times the authorized depth. So that would be something that would have to be considered in the permit.
Okay.
If we were going to propose having a dock there, that would be something that would have to be added to the.
We should just
Well,
explore it.
maybe we should
This is-
explore it. We should continue to explore it.
This is quickly changing, I think,
Yeah.
this is a topic that's gonna change. And we have a problem with our town because we don't have a lot of dock space where boats can sit. So if we can
Right.
plan now before we spend the money for that, it makes it.
Telling Jack, I was at the show at Boco, the boat show last summer, and they had a vendor there just with electric boats. Power boats from like 16 feet, little harbor boats, I call them, with the little furry fringe tops on the umbrella tab, lots of seats, perfect, and all no gas.
You're right. Jack's right. I mean, if we're thinking about the environmental impacts of what we're doing in the harbor, then the idea of providing some opportunity for electric charging makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, any other questions, thoughts? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Pat, was that Pat Carroll? I heard you comment.
No, ma'am, I'm all set here.
Okay, all righty. Sand management. Jeff, our trip to the country club?
This is very interesting. You know, it's considered the most important project, maybe a priority project. I think it's also.
Excuse me, Kim, if feasible, if you could move the microphone a little closer to the speaker, it would be helpful to hear for those of us on the line.
Thank you for saying that. Mentioning. We just moved the microphone right next to Jeff.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We visited the site on February 26th, is that right? Or March 26th?
I think it was March 20, and then you and I went March 25th.
Oh, no, I take it back. Some of these photographs I've included were taken previously on February of last year. But we visited the site on March 25th of this year. And I know this is oversized, but I did make some paper copies of our visit. And again, with Mr. Bull from the Audubon Society, as we mentioned earlier, that one of our tasks is to mitigate the potential impact on piping plover habitat. And we're trying to determine when the birds last nested there. And going back to some of the records that the Fish and Wildlife Service or the communications we had, it seems that the last nesting was over 10 years ago in 2011. And when we were planning the last project in 2014, we needed to monitor the site for 7 years after the birds were last observed nesting. And I think our last monitoring was in 2018, so that would make the 7 years from 2011. It's quite the birds are really fascinating. You know, I won't go into all of the of how fascinating they are, but they need a relatively level space to nest, and it has to be relatively free of grass because if they're not going to nest in the middle of the grass. And the shells and the cobbles or the small pebbles help camouflage the eggs when they do nest. So we looked at the area, and it's interesting that the striations on the side of that steep face of the sandbar show the different tide elevations. And I think, you know, we're not a geomorphologist or whatever the term is, but I think it's pretty easy to identify the normal high tide line and the storm tide line. And according to Mr. Bull, this habitat is not the greatest, especially compared to Long Beach and Stratford or Sandy Point in West Haven, and I think there's another place as well. But it still is habitat. But the viable habitat appears to be the open areas above the storm tide line, because the area between the normal tide and the storm tide can be subject to storm, and the birds would have to relocate their nests. So we tried to, you know, and these drawings or the photos that I put together tried to show. We submitted this to the Corps of Engineers, by the way. They asked when we visited the site, the Corps of Engineers people were not with us. So we provided these photographs of our site visit afterwards. And if you walk down the beach to the east towards Sasko Hill Beach, you get away from the country club's actively maintained beach, and there's a riprap shoreline there. First you come across a well-vegetated low dune, which is vegetated with the other issue we have, which is the Panicum amarum grass, which is a threatened species. But beyond that is a low area with riprap, and there's an area above the storm tide line, it appears. And Mr. Bull thought that's an area where we could perhaps take sand from the dredging project, put the sand along the base of that riprap there above the storm tide line, make in effect a shelf of fairly level sand that might be considered as new habitat for the birds. So that was our suggestion after visiting the site, and we have to further our discussion about it with the Corps of Engineers. The other issue that came up, and I think Kim mentioned it at the last meeting, when we met with the DEEP people the previous month, they talked about their preference for the sand being used for beach nourishment, not to be used as we proposed it to place a short distance offshore on the muddy bottom to try to enhance oyster habitat. And when we said that changes the whole scope of the project, the $1.2+ million that was received from the Corps of Engineers is for using the Currituck dredge. So they asked us to evaluate the potential for beach nourishment. I don't want to use the I all the time, but I went to a meeting of the State Shellfish Commissions a few weeks ago and talked with the director of the Bureau of Aquaculture, whose idea it was to put the sand offshore in the first place to enhance habitat. He thinks that there are substantial, or of course he wouldn't have proposed it if he didn't, environmental values or benefits to be received or achieved if we place it offshore, much more so than any environmental benefits of beach nourishment. So he's going to support write a letter of support for the project, for using it offshore for improving shellfish habitat. And also, we can present that as a project to advance the state's shellfish restoration plan, which is going to be announced or put out for review in May, he said. So we have the Bureau of Aquaculture behind us for our proposed use of the dredge material. I've talked enough about it, but I hope that we're making progress, and I think that we are. It was interesting. You probably saw in the paper that Westport was awarded a substantial amount of money to dredge in the Saugatuck River, and I don't know what, well, that's another project. But the point is that there's attention being given to enhancement of Connecticut harbors, and certainly our project is every bit as deserving, if not more so, than the Saugatuck River project. But anyway, for the people who aren't at here today, I can forward you the electronic copy of these several photographs that we put together. But the aerial photos are from last winter, and the ground photos are from our visit a few weeks ago. And the color images, I think, show the location of this nesting habitat that we have to mitigate.
Don?
Was there any discussion with Marvin on the issue of people and dogs, who of course are way out of our control, and who visit both the present area that is of concern and the area that you've identified for possibly moving stands here?
Yes. So when we had to address that issue when the town excavated in the channel in 2014. So to do that, we had we call it a memorandum of agreement, or actually it was actually a formal piping plover mitigation plan that was signed by the first selectman, by the chair of the Harbor Commission, and by the president of the country club. And that called for, and one of the images in that compilation shows adjusting the string fence that we put around the outside of the nesting area. We had to monitor that. We had to maintain the string fencing to keep people out, not to keep the birds out. And of course, we also had to place signage around it. And then there was an agreement with the country club that they would provide directions to their members about the need not to disturb that area or to go into that area. And then the club was also, their management was to be alert for anybody walking with dogs along the area. The club had responsibilities to be on the lookout for people that had dogs, and the club wasn't to allow any dogs on their property that weren't leashed, but they would also look for people that were going along the beach. So we'd have to have a similar sort of agreement. Don, I'm sort of generally talking about the requirements, but all that stuff was supposed to be we were supposed to address and make sure that the birds were protected, but no birds ever nested in that period.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff?
And I think if the birds do nest, there was also a requirement for placing in, call it an enclosure, an exclosure, a wire, essentially a fence around the nesting, around the nest. And the nests are almost impossible to see because the eggs look just like a small cobble or a shell in the sand. It was just a depression in the sand with the nest. So we're certainly doing our part to protect the habitat.
Right. Any other questions about piping plovers or mitigation efforts or any activity related to the dredging there?
Sorry for the oversized nature. I'll send the electronic copy to everyone.
It's beautiful.
So commissioners on the line, Jeff, this is we've just been looking at a presentation about 10 pages long of pictures showing the various high tide lines, and the area, identifying the area that would be the new, if you will, nesting for the piping plover.
If the ecologist helpful.
So it's worth taking a look at. As they say, a picture says 1,000 words. So this does that. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Any other questions? Okay, moving right along. Mooring Committee, Mr. Hirschler.
Yes, the Mooring Committee met on April 12th in this room, and attending were Jeff Warren, Bill Tarantini, the Harbormaster, Tim Taylor, and me, and Jeff Englewood in his capacity of mooring contractor. The Harbormaster has covered the bulk of what we talked about at the meeting a week ago. For the Mooring Committee, I would add just two things. One, prior to the meeting, Jeff Stedman reported to me an update on the DEEP's response to our inquiry about instituting a deputy harbormaster role. I'll just let you see more than directly rather than speak for you.
Well, the DEP, in fact, they had recommended, in fact, around the time of your appointment, Brian, that we consider recommending the appointment of a deputy harbormaster, which still requires a governor's appointment and would require 3 names to be provided to the governor with a preferred candidate identified. And I'm assuming based on the precedent set with your appointment that the deputy would have jurisdiction over all the town as well as just Southport Harbor.
Yeah.
But we discussed that with the DEP, which is not the liaison, but the Harbormaster reports to the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection. And so they would not object to our recommendation for a deputy harbormaster.
So we can pursue that when you'd like to have that conversation.
Well, are there any, before we do Deputy Harbor, are there any other questions for the?
There's one other point I was going to make, just very quickly, just to dispense with. We were notified also by Online Mooring that they are changing their fees effective July 1st. But upon review of their updates, none of their updated fees will apply to us. The inquiries for support we're doing by email, and they're going to continue to not charge the harbormaster or me if we reach out to them by email. And the charge increase is going to apply to clients with fewer than 100 mooring records, and we have more than that. So all of these updates have no effect on us. Our prices will remain the same going into next year. That's the end.
Okay. Any questions for Jack related to the Mooring Committee meeting? Why don't we discuss the Deputy Harbormaster under new business, so we don't lose our place. Next item on the agenda is the plan update. I've kind of divided this into 2 parts because there were 2 different topics of discussion. One of the things we did discuss at that meeting was a publicity plan that commissioners, you all received the proposal that Don Hyman has put together, and we did discuss that at the Plan Update Committee meeting, but I'd like to just move that along to new business. So in the face of that, the other topic that was discussed at the Plan Update Committee meeting was the narration effort of and working with the high school students and Doug Metchick. That's kind of where we are. So why don't you give us the update?
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure I was off mute. I've actually been a little bit out of pocket since our last meeting, but we have identified through a teacher and 2 students at Fairfield Ludlow High School a way to really, I think, I'm going to borrow some of the words of the PR plan, but I think kind of optimize this presentation a little bit with some real enthusiasm. The ball's in our court to share with them an updated version of that plan where we've segmented the various slides into either chapters or stories that are by title, and I think that work is largely done. Jeff, I don't know if that's been submitted or not yet. If not, you can either submit it directly or share it with me, and I'll submit it.
Yes.
And then we're going to get with them and start to organize it into something that could be narrated and get into different ideas for both the audio and visual side to it. So they're pretty good to go. It's been, a quiet week or two probably since our last meet on it, just because of busy schedules. But I think we can pick it back up and get the kids the information they need.
Great, thank you. Jeff, you?
No, I just said I made some adjustments to the presentation. As Don had suggested, added an introductory slide explaining the purpose of it, why we were putting it together, and then also I updated the dates and added at the end the current commissioners. The previous version had the commissioners from last year, so I can send that along with the outline that wasn't you, Don. It was Doug that put together the 5 or 6 topics for the students to consider breaking this up into. I can send that off tonight to everyone too.
And what are we calling this presentation?
What did I call it? Past, present, and future. I put Southport Harbor, Fairfield, Connecticut, past, present, and future instead of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, just because it took less space for the words.
So do we want that to be on the webpage, on our homepage, to replace one that's
Well,
there?
one of the reasons. One of the purposes of updating it too is that in the annual report,
Sorry.
But in the annual report there would be a link to 3 presentations. The one that we're just talking about, all with the current date. The presentation on the history of the navigation project, and the presentation of the results of our survey. So that embedded in the electronic copy of the annual report, people where we talk about these things, people could click on it and go to the. So we have to adjust the website a little bit, Betty, because there's two versions of the big presentation on the website.
But where it sits now is Betty has moved all of the 3 presentations, the 2 presentations, the survey to the October 2021 presentation, which is what the plan we're working on with the high
April
school.
2020.
And the navigation one are now all sitting on the home page, right at the first page of the home page.
I didn't see
Betty, yeah, Betty has done that. So if we're going to rename it, then we need to replace the one that's there.
The new file.
It's actually in 2 different locations. It's
Right.
still under files and docs.
That's
Right.
what I looked at.
Right.
So when you go into the agency homepage, it's under the news.
All right, okay. You and I can talk about it the next.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna if I rename it, we're gonna start over and we're gonna put it in both places. That's not a problem. I just wanna do it methodically, one.
Right, but
We would want to have one presentation with one title, like you just suggested, and all of the predecessor versions of it that had other titles, could they be eliminated? Because
Yes.
I think it gets confusing.
it gets very confusing.
And we just need the one central one that's
Yes.
the most latest one that has this new, more explanatory title,
Yes.
Southport Harbor, past, present, and future, which I think is easier for someone to embrace.
If someone would like to meet with me and identify, I need this to go away, that to go away, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. We will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we will do that. We will do that. We'll do that.
Hey, Jeff, this is Doug. I have a question. It sounded like you indicated that you've added some slides to the presentation and then might submit that accompanied by the outline that we created. Is that presentation in another form besides the PDF, like PowerPoint or something? I'm wondering whether it might be a good idea for us to come up with a version for them that actually has the slides organized according to the outline, instead of having them do the homework. And I'd be willing to do that. I know it could be a heavy lift. I would just need it in a form different than the PDF.
Yeah, it's just when I saved it as a PDF, it was a file that was easier to email. The PowerPoint, it was a very large document that I couldn't email. Suppose I could share that with you, but it's based on a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, great. Yes. So let's connect after the meeting, and I think maybe we ought to organize it into those chapters to the outline and submit it to them in that form.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
As far as deleting old files from your files and documents, because that's where I've embedded it in your agendas, and that's the official record. I'm not sure I can at least remove them from that spot.
We'll figure it out.
That would be
Okay, I think that's
probably
okay.
right?
I think that's okay.
For archival reasons, yes.
Yeah, especially since if that's the official record, then we can't.
I'm gonna check with Betsy Brown on that.
That's a good.
But people don't go looking there usually. It would be easier to find in front of our own page.
I should just make sure
Like
that it's
to be sure.
okay to delete something that was embedded in an official agenda. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Okay, any questions for Doug? Doug, I'm not too worried about the timing because kids are on vacation this week, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Great point.
Yeah. So thank you. Any questions? Okay, moving along. Status and scope of the Harbor Management Commission. Sorry, Brian. Responsibility for Lower Wharf. Sam, anything?
Yeah. Just that I am getting together with Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recs, to discuss with him, the status and scope, as you say here, and responsibility for the Lower Wharf and how it works with Parks and Recs and the town itself. I have yet to have that meeting, but I expect it to happen shortly because of budget season, which we're right in the middle of. And they vote on the budget early next month. But I'm sure I'll get to them before our next meeting, and we'll have an opportunity to talk and compare notes.
Great.
On the other side is the budget request. Really not a lot of work here because the Board of Selectmen waived the requirement for us to meet and present our budget as well as the Board of Finance. And I lobbied the RTM, Minority Leader Pam Iacona, and the result was that they suspended many of the reports that necessary, with the caveat that there wasn't an increase, and it is held for several years, especially on our side, which is a very low number anyhow. And they have bigger fish to fry with the educational budget that's going to be voted on in early May. So the good news is that, barring something crazy happening, we will have our budget approved.
Great.
For this year.
Great.
And that's my report.
Super. Thank you. Any questions for Sam on the lower? Jeff?
Do you mind if I?
No, go ahead.
Again? On the Lower Wharf Authority, I don't think there's any question that the Harbor Commission is responsible for management of the Lower Wharf. That's written into the deed to the property. So one of our questions, though, was that the beach area, the small beach area that was transferred to the town, just to the south of the Lower Wharf, we had asked at the time that swap was being discussed by the selectmen, who would be responsible for that little piece of beach that people enjoy now when you go down there. So we sort of assumed it was logical that the commission would be responsible for it too, but we never got any confirmation on that.
Yes, and Jeff, just to carry that, the prior selectman was against the town getting the beach because it had all sorts of implications with regard to lifeguards, dogs at the beach, all the things that would be aligned with the rest of the beaches in town. And it is sort of something that it's almost, I would say, a can of worms in a lot of I'm not sure what the results would be, but I think the coordination with Parks and Recs is really important.
Yes. And there were also some parts of that agreement, and I don't know that they've been complied with, because I thought that the property owner was going to be responsible for providing steps from the lower wharf down to that beach. And then there were some other issues that people have raised and brought to the attention of the Harbor Commission concerning the views that are affected by vegetation there. So those were all questions that we wanted to discuss with the town attorney or planning and zoning.
Yeah.
But yes, well, describe it as a can of worms is interesting, because people bring their dogs down there, and it just seems like an enjoyable place to go, and people are enjoying it. But who's responsible if there's a problem?
We have
exactly.
We have pictures that were sent to Betty and to Anthony Calabrese of showing somebody launching a little plastic boat off that beach. Last summer, 2 summers ago. You know, on the vegetation, that's much more than 5 feet, which is what is written into the deed on the property line there. So we've asked the town attorney, Sam, just so you know, for clarification and kind of outline some of those issues, and have heard nothing. And I know Betty has gotten several emails from people wanting signs, signs to be put up, and
counsel for the owner actually was contacting me. Because based on that agreement it's entered into and is on the town records, certain things were supposed to happen, the signage and such, and that has not occurred yet.
And they have not done certain things too, so it's...
We had a request about a bench also in place, so the memorial bench.
Well, that's a whole set. The benches are whole separate issues. I mean, the benches are...
They're all in the same area.
Right, it's all in the same, So... A lot to kind of straighten out and figure out and to talk about.
Right. Very true. And I worry that... But at the end of the day, Kim, just to add that you know, if they start aligning the same rules for Sasko Beach and Southport Beach that for the Lower Wharf Beach, dogs won't be allowed to go be on the beach from May till November.
Right.
It's a whole the law of unintended consequences is what I worry about. So but it has to be addressed. I mean, because it is our responsibility, one way, shape, or form.
Right.
And the enforcement of that will be problematic, to say the least.
Right. Well, Sam, we'll look forward to hearing from you next month. Thanks for doing that. Okay, any questions? Any other questions or comments? All righty, moving along to new business. Publicity plan. Let me just preface Don's presentation here by saying that Jack and I appeared before the RTM in November of 2019, and that we were invited to appear because the RTM was going to have to confirm 4 or 5 commissioners. And the moderator of the RTM said, we're not really quite sure what the commission does. And since that time, and we presented to them, we were very well received, they were very curious and enthusiastic. Since that time, we have done a survey. Over 300 folks responded. We got a lot of queries, a lot of responses that indicated that people did not know what the commission's jurisdiction was, what we did, who runs what down in Southport. And going forward, we're working on updating the harbor management plan, which is going to require a public meeting and is going to require an appearance before the RTM. So it is, in my opinion, critical that we begin to let people know the good things that we do. And Don has graciously and enthusiastically agreed to help us with that. And so he has put together this draft publicity plan for our consideration here tonight. I will just add that the Plan Update Committee took a look at this and was wowed and recommended that we the commission in full discuss it, but they were very enthusiastic and impressed with the work. So with all that, Don?
Thank you. So each of the commissioners should have received a copy of the public relations draft plan that I was talking about. It is a public relations plan as opposed to publicity, and a small distinction there. Publicity is a tool that we use within public relations, but it is not, the larger umbrella is public relations. And there's somebody a lot more glib than myself said a long time ago, all public organizations, banks, government agencies, schools, they have a public relations program going whether they know it or not. It's just whether you have control of it. It's just whether you've thought about it. It's just whether you've organized it. But all organizations have public relations employed, and ours has been lower than, I think, a lower profile than we need, and that's come up for discussion here. So this kind of addresses that, and it's pretty basic and pretty straightforward. And if you've read through it and heard what Kim's just said, that's the background for why we'd want to raise our profile. I will say also, though, that with raising your profile, with news releases, with interviews, with events, with more discussion, with that comes more questions from the public. You are more accountable. If one goes with the other. Not a bad thing. It's just something to recognize. It's a good thing, I would say, that to have that kind of dialogue. But it does take more time and more thought, because things in our world are nuanced and complex and involve different government agencies. So basically the objectives that we're talking about are increasing awareness of the role of the Commission in enhancing and protecting the harbor, and developing an understanding and appreciation for the components of the plan itself, which is now underway. In a sense, some of the things that we can be doing with publicity and with other events is to kind of pre-sell this plan to the various units of government that are going to have to pass on it, so that they have some knowledge of what we do and why we do it and how we do it, and expand understanding of that role so it can be approved more rapidly. We have some basic strategies. There's events coming up. Brian spoke about the U.S. Geologic Survey research that's going on, and we have a news release on that, which I'll share with you in a minute. That's been actually just recently reviewed by the Geologic Survey people and approved by them. And with your approval, we will take it to our first select woman. And I think our hope was that the first place that this news release might appear would be in her periodic report. And then once it's kind of validated in that, we would send it out to general audience news media, and perhaps it could go by email to the list of mooring holders that you work with, Brian, and other existing avenues of communication to our target audiences. The good news is that there are a lot of things that we can talk about. The research is one. There's tremendous interest in dredging. Anything we do with the lower Wharf area. There's an annual report that Jeff has put together or will be finalizing soon, and that in itself is good. And we've talked about the need to develop a kind of a workhorse tool, a presentation that we're now calling Southport Harbor Past, Present, Future. I like that. It's a lot easier than just calling it by a date. And when we get to the point where the high school effort can enhance that into some kind of a more engaging, narrated, more visually rich experience, that would be great. But even before then, I think we can use the existing presentation as a reference to direct people to that are interested so that they can get that level of information. So, the strategies involve leveraging opportunities as they come up, using existing channels, supplementing town communication with news media and social media outreach, and making visits to our website a more common and more rewarding and more engaging experience than now is the case. I think you've started to organize some of the presentations on the landing page to be more accessible. And I think
put them on the homepage.
On the homepage. And if you think about it, we're in the world that we live in, whether you're looking for CDC information or IRS information or whatever government agency you're going to, the rule is make it easy, make it simple. Don't, otherwise people are not going to take the time. If it's confusing, so we have to do what we can.
I think the site does need work, actually.
Yeah.
The way that it was set up, it's hard to find certain documents.
And the documents are, while rich and interesting, tend to be labeled chronologically by date. And to a new person coming, and I'm kind of a new person, it's bewildering. So we need to kind of, as we move along, start to think about retitling some presentations so it's not simply the date, something a little richer that someone can more easily grab hold of if we want people to grab hold of it.
You're still going to need to be cognizant of what has been embedded as an attachment. I'll get clarification on that. I have a note to myself as well as 20 others on my to-do list for tomorrow.
Well, we have a legal requirement to have a public record, and then we have a kind of a public relations expectation to make things accessible. We just have to kind of try to do a balancing act, I think.
I think it may be in the future, the way that the First Selectwoman's office does it, when you go on to, you view that and you see their agenda, their minutes, there's something called there's another level called backup documents. That may be the way you want to go in the future, so you don't run into this. Again, that's still electronically somewhere. It's probably a PDF, if I'm not mistaken, so people can access it. That may avoid the problem in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So I think the plan is pretty straightforward. There were a bunch of tactics that I included. One of them that we talked about ties into the blessing of the fleet too. I developed a draft of kind of 7 facts you might not know about Southport Harbor. All of them are taken from Jeff's presentation and then boiled down into little bullets. There's no new information there. But they work as a kind of a teaser that could appear in the program, and hopefully with a link at the end of it that would take people to the fuller discussion in your presentation. So there's this kind of 2-step process. I think you're in charge of the program, so hopefully there'll be room for some version of that.
Fit it in.
Yeah, fit that in. What I can do now, I have a copy of the news release that the USGS people have approved. There's one error in it. We will change the sentence that says the research effort will start in April. We'll cross out April and put in May. But that's an easy fix. And everything else has been reviewed by Brittany Isbicki and her superiors, U.S. Geological Survey, and other people. And I think it's good to go.
Is that going to go on the town's website and your website?
It will ultimately. In final form, I think we could do that, but I think, here, I'll give it to you. Pass these around, please.
Don, if this is going to go to the press now, I see frequently, you could feed them stories. Here's more, gentlemen.
I do.
They'll just take stories that you ghostwrite and run them in the local newspapers, whether it's the Patches, the Citizens, even the Post. Do you have a photo to go with this?
I do.
I was gonna ask if we have a picture of a,
I do.
Kim with a buoy or something next to her.
It's gonna go to her.
What we have is,
Jeff, I'm sure Jeff has a wonderful picture of
I tried to get,
something we can even use.
I tried to get the pictures from
And we started.
Brittany of the buoys themselves, but I didn't have that. What I got from Brittany, was the aerial map that shows where the research is going on.
Jeff may have even a better quality, I think.
Something like this, maybe, if you highlighted where the...
Well, she actually has sent us this, and I'll give you...
Did she get that from you, maybe? I don't know if she had her own pictures, or she was even using...
Here. There's a fuller version of this that has our harbor, and then Sasko Beach is down here where there's also going to be research. And so it's an aerial view that's better than the one I'm showing you now.
She had a nice one of the buoy kind of up close with the kind of structure with the radar dish or whatever.
I didn't see that, and I asked her for it, and...
It's in an email somewhere, right?
It's an email. We got,
right.
Yeah, there's, I'll look for a few minutes before I have to take off and go remove it on this, but let me look for this remaining.
If you can find that, I would love to use
It's almost
that.
like a shot like that. I mean, that's just the one off of Southport, but...
That would be great.
I mean, you can even use that shot, just, pick another,
Right.
It doesn't even matter. We can just take a stock, a screensaver I took last year sailing, but I want...
Yes, that could, in the absence of...
Because that's the kind of thing that people want to see. They're not going to...
Right.
An aerial might not come out with the resolution, but let me quickly see if I can find Becky's.
But you're right. For other organizations I've worked with and still work with, I send out news releases. I just did one for a clinic for community sailing, which some may have seen. And the picture is very helpful.
Right.
So if you can send me whatever pictures you have that you think might help enhance this story, I can add that to my distribution.
Brittany, yeah.
So I think what we're looking for is discussion about the documents that we've shared with you, the idea itself of raising our profile, being more proactive, being more transparent in some cases, and moving forward with this kind of thing on as opportunities become available basis. That's all I'll say.
I have 2 comments.
Jeff?
Some years ago, the Stratford Waterfront Commission, on the commission, had an artist who designed a logo for the commission. It was very good. And we attached that to images and correspondence and so forth, but I just bring that up. And
logos can help. Yeah.
And then the other topic, your objectives of the outreach. Another objective to consider would be to encourage individuals to be good stewards of the harbor, to what they can do is they use the harbor to protect environmental quality or improve environmental quality, but somehow emphasize we're encouraging everyone who uses and enjoys the harbor to be a good steward of the harbor. I mean, one extreme is, don't throw stuff in the water, but that's a crude example, but there are other ways that people can contribute to environmental stewardship. Everybody can.
I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
And, we ought to identify 3 things,
yes.
Whatever. 3 is a magic number that stays in people's heads sometimes that you can do. And just to keep including that in communication as it comes up.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Any questions for Don? Any thoughts? Reactions?
That pictures make it bigger. It shows the actual buoy.
Yeah, send me that.
It's when they sent, if you look at the top,
yeah,
of it,
right.
that one that shows what it actually is.
Brian is showing us a picture of the buoy that Brittany, that USGS sent to him early on in this process.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be included.
I asked her for that, and I'll show you her response because I think that would work perfectly.
Yeah, that's very good.
She was a little tentative about it because there was some bell and whistle that's coming that's not in that, but those are small details that.
What's your email, D?
DWEJ.
DWEJ. There it is, I got it, 61 at AOL.
Yeah.
Don, I'll give you
Send it to you.
one suggestion on that, and I think the third paragraph, the yacht club is not upstream of the harbor, it's within the harbor, so I just take out of and put within. Makes it sound like the yacht club is within the harbor.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right,
I think
Right.
I put it within there.
Right.
Within the harbor.
Yeah, it's upstream, that's true.
it is,
still
but
in the harbor.
it's definitely part of the harbor.
Oh.
So any thoughts or
That's good
comments,
change, thank you.
reactions to the plan in general?
That's great.
And this news release with the two changes we discussed, changing the date from April to May and within the harbor rather than upstream of harbor, I will take this to the first selectwoman's office, and as I told her I would do after we spoke about it, and see that it gets included in her report, and then once it's published there, we can take it further.
Great. Does anybody have any comments? Those of you who've seen the press release, any comments aside from the one that Jeff, you okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Great.
I think it's really good.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Just remember what I said. There'll be more. The more we communicate, the more questions will come up. That's a good thing, but you'll have to think about it.
Right.
Thank you.
Don, thank you very much. Okay. Jeff?
Can I make another comment?
Absolutely.
I mentioned that I went to the statewide meeting of shellfish commissions last month, which was very good, and there were representatives from the Fairfield Shellfish Commission who attended, including the chairman. I believe his name is Mr. Short. And he expressed an interest in attending the Harbor Commission meeting. I thought he might be here this month, because he asked questions about our dredging project, because he was, the approval from the Shellfish Commission for the placement of the materials offshore took place when there were different members of the Shellfish Commission. So he asked if he could come to a commission meeting. We might want to formally invite him for next month's meeting to make sure we have their support for the dredging project.
Great.
I also, interestingly, it was a very interesting meeting. There were people from the Bureau of Aquaculture and from DEEP, and I didn't realize the responsibility and the program that the Bureau of Aquaculture has to monitor water quality and test shellfish meats to protect the public health of people who eat shellfish harvested from Connecticut. It's a big responsibility. They have quite an elaborate, that's the right word, program to do that. So there were a number of pretty good presentations. And then afterwards, after the presentations, people sort of turned their chairs into a circle, and people from each town talked about shellfish-related matters of interest in each town. And they asked me to say something because I wasn't saying anything. And I mentioned the pending court case that would diminish Harbor Management Commission's authorities, and said that that's a matter that affects also shellfish commissions, because the Harbor Management Authority can be used to achieve decisions that are protective of shellfish resources. And most everyone, people hadn't heard, the other shellfish commission members from throughout the state hadn't heard of this, and they asked if we could provide some information on that. But they all agreed that that's an issue affecting local authority. And shellfish plans are they're guidance documents, but they were never intended to have the same authority as a harbor management plan. So, for example, in Norwalk, the Harbor Commission, works closely with the Shellfish Commission, and when the Shellfish Commission makes a motion or a decision, that the commissions coordinate their recommendations. So it affects that court decision is going to affect a lot of things. But anyway, that's.
Well, I'll reach out to Mr. Short and invite him to our May meeting.
I think that would be good. He also raised some other issues because the Shellfish Commission does not receive copies of certificates of permission applications, which are applications for maintaining something or replacing something in kind, a dock or some other project, a bulkhead. And they also don't receive proposals, these general permit registrations, for example, building small docks that are called 4x40 docks. And so they express concern that projects are being, of course, this is outside the Harbor Commission's jurisdiction, but I thought that there might be a way, in the past, when the Harbor Commission received an application from outside of its jurisdiction, the Commission provided that to the Shellfish Commission, even though the Harbor Commission didn't have any role in it. So I think Mr. Short wanted to talk about that too.
Great.
If Commission gets applications outside of our jurisdiction, to make sure that the Shellfish Commission also gets a copy of that.
Well, we certainly got 2 notices from DEEP about the Bay Edge Court over in Ash Creek dock. And I recall vividly mentioning it here at the meetings when we got them, and I was not aware that the Shellfish Commission
does not get those.
where they grow a huge number of oysters.
How long ago was that?
Say what?
How long ago was the Bay Edge?
A year,
Okay.
2 years ago. I mean,
When I would get them and see them from you, I would show the Shellfish Commission and/or Conservation Commission, because I knew that they also had an interest.
That was part of the agreement, or the procedure back then. But you would get
I still
them
do it.
in the.
do you still get them?
If I see them through you,
Okay.
that you're addressing it, even though it's out of your jurisdiction, I do forward it on to them.
Okay. So maybe they did get it.
Not that often,
Yeah.
but sometimes,
Yeah.
like you were just talking about one on REAP, I hadn't seen that.
Okay, but because I was aware that the Shellfish Commission was unaware of the Bay Edge Court, I checked the list of who received this one that I mentioned today from DEEP, and, Mr. Bishop got it, and the First Select Woman got
Okay.
it. So presumably, if Mr. Bishop gets it, the Shellfish Commission gets it.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just that period of time when there was no conservation director that,
No, it's
okay.
just their.
All right, but you and I will stay in touch with that. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
The one item of new business that we kind of referred from the mooring committee meeting was the appointment of the search for a deputy harbor master. I'm reluctant to kind of begin that until till the harbor master has had an opportunity to kind of get the boats in the harbor and the mooring system set up. But we would need a committee, and we would have to post.
We can't hear you.
So when there's, whether it's the raffle or whatever it is, if they don't win the raffle, they know where to go.
You did. Okay, very good. Anyone hear us? Hello?
Pat Carroll, are you still with us?
They might.
Oh, shoot.
We lost
This,
you at
this is Doug.
5:55.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. Pat
Hello?
Carroll, we can hear
No,
Doug.
it's Harry.
Who?
Harry.
Harry? Okay, Harry. So we can hear Doug and we can hear Harry. Pat Carroll, are you still with us? What a shame.
Why
Okay,
don't we
what
just
a
call,
shame.
we can call Pat when we're done.
Okay. So are there any comments from the public? Any questions? Any reactions? Hearing no comments from the public, can I have a motion to adjourn? Jack is moving.
I move we adjourn. Oh,
Don
second
seconded.
the emotion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. We will all get together again in May. Thank you very much.